All right, we'll let those last few continue to join, but we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining our fifth installment of Coffee Chat with Catalyst Creative. First off, we'd just like everybody just to take a couple of deep breaths and sit back and relax. This will be about a 30 or 45-minute conversation. We've got some special guests with us today. It's the team from Speakfully. A little bit about, we'll get to Speakfully, but a little bit of background on Catalyst and who I am. I'm Robert Fowler. I'm the co-founder and CCO of CatalystCreativ, and we're a creative agency focused on branding, marketing, and events. And we use our proprietary method called the 7th Level Engagement Framework in all of our work that we do. And Catalyst started just over 7 years ago. We're a fully remote team since day one. So if you've joined us in the past, you've heard all about remote work and engagement. And of course, if you've missed those, you can visit our website and go to our blog where we have all of those recordings so you can hear those in the past. If you've joined us by phone today, which it looks like a few of you have, we have an email address, which is coffee@catalystcreativ.com, no E at the end of creative. So feel free to send any questions that you have there if you'd like those answered by us or our guests today. There's also a Q&A function down at the bottom of the screen that you can click on if you would like, and you can feel free to ask us any questions there. So we'll be answering those toward the end of the session today, but continue to go ahead and put those in there. So I think that, today we really want to talk about community. We want to talk about engagement. There's a lot of things that we want to talk about, but the real reason that we wanted to do these calls is because we wanted to give everyone some time just in the middle of the week. Have you sit back, listen, hopefully learn, hopefully grow. There's some familiar names here who have joined us every week. And for those of you who've joined us in the past, we're super grateful that you're here again. So before we get started with Speakfully, I just wanted to share something from a newsletter that my dad shared with me from Chris Clark, who's the president and CEO of the Georgia Chamber. It's kind of funny. I feel like Chris maybe has listened to our calls or seen our plans for future calls, which he definitely hasn't, because so many of the things that he touched on were things that we've discussed in the past or that we plan on discussing in a few weeks. And for those of you who are joined, who are worried about your business or worried about, had plans to start something in the future or just joining for a little bit of inspiration, there's just a couple points that really stuck with me from his newsletter that I wanted to share. And the first is that as Americans, we have the incredible ability to overcome great obstacles. History has really instilled in us the work ethic to rebuild, and we've done it time and time again. Businesses can survive economic headwinds if their ship is strong and stable, and hopefully these calls will help you kind of learn how you personally or your company can become stronger and a bit more stable. Another one of his points is that every business should develop a recovery business plan and to think of life without emergency loans while still operating in an emergency environment. So I think in the beginning, we were all really worried, not really knowing what to do. Then things like PPP, the payroll protection plan, and the SBA loans came about, which sort of gave us a little bit of breathing room. But now it's sort of like looking past those. We've all probably applied for those loans personally and professionally. We've all talked with our landlords, businesses have worked with their vendors, but what is next after, if this continues to go on for a long time, what's going to be after that? And I really love this point that the US economy will rebound over time, but the rolling reopening will look different for different companies in different regions, producing uneven economic growth across the nation. Businesses should be prepared for an economy that starts and stops several times over the next 2 years. So that means, really developing disruptive operational models. Some of us may have to embed the CDC guidelines and best practices to protect us, our customers, our clients, our suppliers, especially our employees in our long time. So, investing in new technology, new delivery partnerships, buying local, identifying new markets, stronger community engagement, which is one of our, big things at CatalystCreativ, and then maybe, different ways of marketing and sizing. And then I think the most important thing, which we really try to drive home, is just to be bold and be caring and, keep those in mind while you're trying to figure out new revenue ways. So today we want to discuss what it's been like, navigating your company through these uncharted waters and the importance of remaining nimble and flexible, especially as a startup. And we really carefully picked the word startup because our guests Speakfully are as a startup, as you may think of it, an early stage company. But we also picked it because there's a definition from Neil Blumenthal, who's a friend of Catalyst and co-founder and CEO of Warby Parker. And he said, a startup is a company working to solve a problem where the solution is not obvious and success is not guaranteed. And I just feel like that's all of us right now. Even large companies that have been profitable, companies that have been around for a lot of years, everyone is having to reevaluate their business models, how they're driving income, how they're managing their team, how they're taking care of people while they're working remote. The list just goes on and on. So me personally, I've called Catalyst a startup since day one because we've always been adjusting. We're always changing. We're always pivoting depending on the needs of our clients in the market. And speaking of pivoting and change, Business Insider did a feature Monday about a company an animal sanctuary out in Silicon Valley called Sweet Farm. And obviously, as an animal sanctuary, their business has traditionally relied on visitors' donations to keep the business up and going. But they're now offering a service which is hilarious called Goat to Meeting. And for $100, there's actually a photo of it here on the screen. You can have a llama or a goat join your meeting. So for those of you who are dialed in and can't see it, we'll be sure to include it in our recap. But I just think this is awesome. And they said that as of Monday, they already had over 300 requests. So not only are businesses having to pivot, but we personally are also having to pivot. And yesterday, I just wanted to share, because I thought it was hilarious. My very active and tech savvy 4-year-old nephew has been getting a bit creative. Yesterday, he was teaching his dinos how to Zoom and do virtual backgrounds. I actually have a screenshot here to share with you. He even asked his mom to join from the kitchen while she was cooking. And it was so funny when I asked him if I could share the screenshots today on my call. He said, hold on, let me change the names first. So he actually went in and changed the names to his dinos and his name. And so I think it's official that my 4-year-old nephew is more tech savvy than me. But so I just wanted to share that. So thank you for listening. But with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists from Speakfully team. We're super lucky to have them on the call. We have Jana, Jen, and Nandini. Welcome, ladies. The first, I guess we'll kick it over to Jana as the founder and CEO. If you could just tell us a little about Speakfully and the services you provide.
Sure. Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here. My Wi-Fi is a little wobbly right now, so you need to tell me, Robert, if you can't understand what I'm saying.
No worries.
I've been running all over the house trying to find the best spot, and I don't know if I can find it. But yeah, so Speakfully is an HR platform that gives employees a safe and private space to voice their concerns to their HR department. While at the same time, I'm giving some data and analytics to those HR departments to get some insight into their culture and the different trends that are happening within their culture, which is obviously very timely right now, because I think in the times that we're in, especially, I mean, this has always been a thing, I think, for the last year or two that's been top of mind for people. But now it's even more top of mind because now everyone is remote, and it's a little bit harder to navigate from an HR team the culture and get a pulse on what's going on within the culture when everybody is decentralized in all different places. There's no open door policy anymore because there's no open door. So it's how can people be able to express some of those concerns that they may have, and kind of allow, at the same time, HR to be more proactive versus reactive with some of the cultural trends that we can give them.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, there was a quote from the CEO of HomeJoy, and this is actually from 2013, that a startup is a state of mind. It's when people join your company and are making the explicit decision to forgo stability in exchange for the promise of tremendous growth and excitement of making an immediate impact. And I feel like this is all of us on this call right now. And I'm curious, Jana, how do you feel that Speakfully is making an immediate impact, or how has your business model had to change in the last 6 weeks, or has it?
Yeah, I mean, I would, yeah. I mean, I think we had a lot of, we just launched the organizational product that we offer, that I was just talking about. We offered it, end of around Q3, Q4 of last year. And so I think what we were really excited, to be able to get out, and we were partnering a lot with a bunch of different organizations to be on site and do conferences and get in front of people. And, that is where we were expecting to get a lot of our growth from. And, we were planning for that. And then, this happened, and now we had to cancel all of those things. And it kind of is, very deflating when all of a sudden, the first event gets canceled, then the second one, and it just kept going. And it's like, okay, this is actually a thing. Like, we have to really, what are we going to do? How are we going to pivot and take that and go with what it is, like what's out of our control. And so now it's more of, I've always felt that our product in particular has been relevant, but now it's how are we going to, change the way that we market it so that people understand that it's even more relevant now with the times that we're in. But also at the same time, I'm really mindful of being sensitive to what's going on as well. And I don't want to, everyone's getting so bombarded with emails and, everything, because everyone is, it's happening to everyone. And so it's trying to stay sensitive and try to be sensitive to that, of what's going on in the world, but also still try to be able to sell your product because you do actually believe in it and believe that it can make a difference. So it's trying to find that line, that fine line. And then, getting people to respond is an issue too, because they're getting, however many emails a day, trying to say how their product is the best. And so it's trying to, find the best way to do that. And we're still figuring it out. I think that, we're getting there. But it's been just trial and error, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely been the case for us at Catalyst, and a lot of people that we've talked to, possibly going back to old products that had been offered before, or, even moving into new systems, and how those can be adjusted and adapted to what we're dealing with now. Thankfully for Catalyst, and I think for you guys as well, we've all been remote teams largely since day one. So the adjustment to remote work has really not been so different for us at Catalyst. When I see everyone posting, saying like that they just watched 10 hours of Netflix or whatever, I'm like, wait, aren't you working?
Right.
And so, we haven't really had that. And so maybe, I don't know if Jen or Nandini want to, I'm curious, and Jen, what you guys have been doing differently to keep everyone on your team connected.
I can answer that.
Hi. I'm sorry. I was like, it's Jen.
Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, did you say Jen or Jana, Robert?
Either. Go for it.
My sister's name is Jen, so I get both. So sometimes I don't respond to either. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, so I think that everybody's just been a lot more in communication with each other, for sure. I mean, there's many different platforms for that. You can pick up the phone and call each other. Slack is huge, but we've really ramped up the amount of communication that we have with each other as a team to just make sure we're all on the same page as to how we are pivoting and staying relevant in these times and communicating to our customers. So you just have to really stay connected. I personally am just motivated by the fact that we are all in this together. And we are a community, and the more we can lend a hand to be helpful and relevant to everybody who's struggling right now is really exciting. And that's what keeps me, motivated to just keep at it day in and day out, even though we're, in a world where we aren't able to meet in person anymore, do the trade shows and all of that. We just have to, really just ramp up our game.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, Robert, too, like in particular to the teams itself, we have weekly stand-ups for the entire team. And what we do is, originally, what I originally had is everyone tell me what you did, because it's always at the beginning of the week. So it's always like, what did you do this weekend? But we ended up changing that last week because, I mean, everyone, it's not really exciting. Everyone's at home now. So there's not like any new cool thing that you did this weekend that you can kind of get to know you a little bit and what your activities are for the weekend. So now I just changed it to just, I'm finding a random question to ask everyone before they talk about what they're going to be doing for the week in regards to work. So it's just like, okay, before you tell me what you're doing this week, tell me, like yesterday it was, what was your first job? And so we can kind of get to know people a little bit more. And I'm trying to do it as well, which I believe this always, but I think even more now as to finding humor in the situation. And so trying to find more lighter questions that isn't super sensitive, because everyone's already dealing with that to begin with. And I think that's something that people should put into their practice always with work and with their employees. But I do think even now it's more relevant to find humor.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Catalyst is the same, at the start of every week, we have a weekly check-in where everyone, as you said, kind of just gives time. We give the space for people to share whatever they want to share. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had some tears, we've had some good laughs about some stories, but I'm also curious, the isolation part, I think, is something that is, especially for people who live in, New York and in these larger cities where, a lot of people live in small apartments, and, maybe you're used to, if you went into an office, your office was, your time for socialization as much as it was a time for work. So, and I think that when we first started talking about Speakfully and some of the dinners that we had done together, the platform, was really there for people who may have had mistreatment in the workplace, whether that was physical or whatever it was. And, people really opened up about those experiences. But now sort of the isolation part of people being at home by themselves, perhaps people need a way to be able to, and I love the name Speakfully because it really does mean the ability to speak fully. How has that changed the tool, or is it, or did it never really change at all? And this has been something that has been there all along?
Yeah, a little bit of both, actually. So we do have, I think, a couple different things. I believe that we've always, the one big thing is we've changed our verbiage quite a bit, obviously trial and error throughout. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that people can go in and no matter what they're feeling, that they have a way to go and do it safely, privately, and then a way to be able to provide that to their organization. And lots of times you don't even know what you're feeling. You just know that it's not something, and you just need to go and express it somewhere. And so that we're giving them a platform to do that and be able to give some resources to that. But we did add some additional questions that we do ask that give some data and analytics to the HR departments, and specifically to remote work. And so, we did add a couple features in that regard. But it is something that's always been there. It's just now it's even more pronounced and more obvious that it's more relevant. Even, I mean, I've always thought it's relevant, but now it's just kind of like, wow, I mean, this is something that could actually be so helpful and beneficial to organizations to be able to keep a pulse on what's going on. I personally know, like, being isolated, and I live by myself, and it's crazy. I mean, I tell this to I talk to my team about this, and I always have liked my alone time, but like this is a whole new thing, new level. And I think last week you talked about this in your talk, and that it was just that, how you had a friend who, it's just a different experience. And I think that people assume that they know what it's going to be like for other people. I think just as hard as it is for families to have to navigate working with their spouse, and then also with their kids, and they have that to navigate now. It's not any harder or less hard, or it's just different, that someone who's by themselves, it's totally opposite, and it is very isolating and alone, and you don't have things to distract you. You are in your thoughts 24/7. So I think that it's good for employers to be able to have a tool that they can find out some of these things and kind of get an idea of what's going on, and know this. because otherwise they won't know. I mean,
Sure.
everyone's kind of in their own little bubble, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, and Nandini, I know that you really head up a lot of the tech, and so I'm curious. When young teams are approaching the unknown and like developing new things, and especially maybe from a tech perspective, because I see we have some people on the call who are focused on that. Any advice for young teams when I'm approaching the unknown?
Robert, yeah, it is actually going back to the whole trial and error thing. I think, like you said, we have always been a remote team. So there are a lot of things, there are certain boundaries within which we work, given that we're remote. But now that the parameters have like really changed quite a bit, now everyone's got other family members or other significant others that are also in a remote setting. So when you're in that zone, I think it's very important to still find that time, to be creative about what you're really trying to build out. And that's something, that's a philosophy I encourage the team, to follow a lot. We are at a place where, we are having to pivot a little bit, try a few different messaging options, and also make some adjustments to the product and the technology itself. So I think now is also a great time. The other advice I give is now is also a great time for you to chip away at that backlog. We all have backlogs. We all have a technical to-do list. Now is a great time to just chugging at it. It was that big caching thing that we never implemented, or it's that big query that we didn't do. So finding the time to be creative, not just about, not just in terms of, how you're presenting something, but also being creative with the tech piece, just chip away at that. I think that would be the advice I give, and find time for that creativity.
Absolutely. I feel at Catalyst, while a lot of our business has always been events, a huge part of our revenue has been in-person events for the last 7 years. And obviously with that on hold, we've really had to look at how we're changing that. And so we are really trying to say that Catalyst, we are now in that time that is filling the time of when we were doing these in-person events, that Catalyst is now our biggest client. And just as you said, Nandini, you have this list that's sort of like this running thing of things that you want to do, but you're putting clients or other people first, or,
Right.
traveling or pitch decks or things like that. And so it's really, I love that, to really use this time to start a list if you haven't already, or look at the list that you've got. And, one way that we do that at Catalyst is we encourage our team members to put blocks on their calendar. So it sometimes can be daunting when you look at the list, but I say that if you've got 10 things on your list for the week, block an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon for 5 days, and you can get through all of those things in that 1 week. And really making the time for that, and putting time in there too to have time to get outside, to go for a walk, because as remote workers, we all know that it's very easy to sit down in your pajamas right after you get up and, start checking emails. The next thing you know, it's time for lunch and you have a call. So you're grabbing something really quick. And then all of a sudden you look down and you haven't had dinner or a glass of wine, which may be the most important part of these times. And, you look down and it's so late. And I think that really setting the boundaries for yourself, just like you do at the office, you're not having that time that you have to commute. So, one of the things I love to do is shower, get up, go for a walk, almost like I'm going to an office, and then come back and that's my time. That's when I get started, but I've had some time for myself in the morning.
One thing, Robert, that I think that it's just to add on to what Nandi was saying. I mean, advice for young teams, for the unknown, I think also one thing that I've reiterated quite a bit to myself is just to focus on what you can control. I think that's the biggest thing right now, is you trying to guess what's going to happen, and we don't know, and it's out of our control. I mean, to a certain extent, but it's out of our control. And so it's what can we control? And to Nandini's point, we can continue to add features to our product. We can continue to build it so that when we do come out of this, which we will, that it's going to be bigger and better than ever. And so it's just focusing on what we can control versus, trying not to get too deep in the woods of thinking about other things that you can't control and then obsessing about those things.
For sure. Yeah, I'm curious, as a founder, Jana, like what inspired you to create Speakfully? Was it a time of distress or a time of something like what we're going through now? Or was it, I feel that a lot of people, this is something that I've been struggling with personally, is that you read all these articles that say, you know, we've got a lot of free time right now. Like there's the space, you're not having to go to an office, like use this time to create, use this time to,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm so focused on the survival of our team and, you know, just like figuring things out. I'm like not in my apartment in the city right now. Life has changed a lot. So I'm curious, you know, what inspired you to start something like Speakfully, and at what time of your life was that?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely was in a moment of distress, I would say. Unfortunately, you know, Speakfully, I, I experienced something on my own that kind of gave me some insight into what I feel like would be helpful to someone in a situation like I was in. So, you know, I had worked at a previous employer and I worked for a C-level employee. And throughout that time of working there, it's the longest story ever. So I'm not going to get into the story because I could sit here and talk for 3 hours. But in while I was in it, it was just a lot of emotional ups and down roller coasters, and it was a lot of questioning myself, not sure what it was that I was experiencing. And when I ended up coming out of that, I started reflecting a lot on what it was that I wish I would have had when I was in a situation, and how I could help other people. You know, in a situation like that. And not just me personally, like as an employee, but also from an organizational perspective, what I wished that they would have done, or I wish they would have had in order to help me as an employee, and what would have made me come forward sooner versus me staying and being in the situation I was for such a long period of time.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that we all have these certain times in our life when things happen, and how we come out of them. And we're all super grateful that, you know, unfortunately that you went through this, but all lucky that we now have something like Speakfully that came about from that. So
Right. And then that's the point too, is like I always say I don't regret anything that's happened because obviously it brought me to Speakfully. So you never, like you said, you just don't know. I always believe that every negative experience will have a positive one come out of it somehow. And that was kind of mine. And so I do believe that that is the truth for the situation that we're all in right now too.
absolutely. Jen, another question for you, and then I'd love Nandini and Jana for you to answer this as well, is, you know, what is something that you wish your current self could tell your 1 year ago self about what's to come? So Speakfully was really just getting going last year. So I'm curious, you know, for you guys, your thoughts on that.
I think that, you know, what I've learned is the importance of being nimble and really thinking outside of the box, and not, you know, just staying in one lane or just siloing yourself. Like, this whole pandemic has forced us to become closer as a team. Our communication has increased abundantly, and we are dreaming up new things to make our platform more robust. So if I could tell myself a year ago one thing that, you know, you can learn from all of this, is just how to pivot and be nimble and keep reinventing yourself, and not stay complacent. And so I think that's how we're going to come out of this stronger, is just the ability to think on your feet and be creative and pivot and listen and be strong and don't give up.
I love that. Nandini?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think I would have told myself that I would have told myself to find ways to build the technology in a way that we're able to constantly bring about that kind of change. And I think, you know, knowing, you know, what's in the future, what it can hold for you, I think the lesson I've learned is not just really focus on the present and build and try to make the best of what we've got now, but really look for solutions that can be, that can actually just do better integrations, that solutions that can actually, give you more flexibility. I think those are some of the lessons I would, I've learned, and I wish I had kind of told myself that. So I think it's really the, again, boils down for me to like just how creative we're being, and how flexible we're able to like, make our product as well as ourselves to adjust to this.
For sure. Jenna, any thoughts?
I honestly don't know what I would have told myself. I even knowing what I know now, I don't even know if I would wanted to know, because I do feel like, if we knew this was going to happen, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel it's hard to prepare yourself for something like what we're in right now.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you just don't know. I mean, I've always believed that I don't ever judge anyone or anyone's situation that they're in, because you just don't truly know what it feels like until you're in it yourself.
Absolutely.
You might think that you know what you're gonna do, but you just don't know. And so I don't know how you could prepare someone for something like this. And I think that, being known that this was going to come, I feel like it would have just made it worse almost.
Sure.
And we wouldn't have made us as close as we are. And I think that I do believe that, it is, everything is happening and we're figuring it out. And I do think that we'll come out stronger. And so I don't know. It's a good question.
Maybe you just would have told yourself to just buy more Purell and toilet paper when you saw it.
Beforehand. Exactly.
We did have a couple questions that came through the Q&A, and I want to divide this question out because I think it's really good. And I'm going to ask the first part to Jen and the second part to Nandini. Jen, how do you feel that we could integrate Speakfully into government was the first part of the question that came through.
Ooh, that's a heavy question.
Yeah.
I mean, Speakfully can be integrated into any organization. It's absolutely a wonderful, important product to be, for any organization to provide to their colleagues. It's a simple integration process. Obviously, it's hard to get into government because there are so many different layers. So, I mean, it would have to be something that we probably started at the state level, and that would just be, and then we would just work our way up from there. So, I mean, that's definitely something that's a robust goal. I can tell you that we are starting to partner with some insurance companies to perhaps be selling our product on a wholesale added value benefit kind of level. And some of the insurance companies that we're working with are already in tight with government. So that might be an avenue if we're kind of, packaged with, an existing benefit package that's being sold on that kind of, in that kind of arena, if that makes sense.
For sure. Yeah. And Nandini, I really love this second question. And it's would you ever connect all of Speakfully's data so companies can begin to see the trends of what their employees are feeling year to year, month to month? This information would greatly benefit business owners to have a better understanding of their employees, such as measuring how employees respond to new shifts in the company, new products, new models, new hires. Would we see that many trends are consistent among many different markets?
That's a great question, and I'm actually geeking out about this. So there are a couple different angles to this. The first one is, yes, Speakfully does have the ability to show you very specific trends on how employees are reacting to different things, how are employees perceiving, different occurrences, and all of these are factors that drive morale and culture overall. So our analytics dashboard, we do have all of the data that we show in there that gives you that kind of trend, that exactly month over month trend. How are employees reacting? How are they coming forward and reporting issues? Are they not reporting issues? If they are being reported, how are they being handled? So there's complete transparency through the analytics dashboard in the form of like these kind of data trends. So absolutely, that already exists for us as a platform. So the second part of the question is, would we share all of this data across companies? There's this whole element of privacy that I wanted to call out. So I think a lot of employees, when they're coming forward to express or voice their concerns, they want their employer to hear about it, and we also respect the the psychological safety and the privacy that they wish to get. So there's a certain amount of controlled anonymity, like I would call. You disclose when you want to come forward and submit a report, but everything stays within an organization. So we don't at this point consolidate any of the data to, to show trends across different types of organizations or different markets. But within an organization, absolutely, you can see the trends. And I think for HR and people leaders and any leadership team, they would be very curious to see how their organization's reacting to various factors. Like, I'm sure they'd want to look at data at some point and say, okay, this pandemic hit us and we've had to shift to a remote work environment. What did that do to the employee's head? I mean, where's their heart at?
Sure.
How did they react to switching to a completely new remote environment? Were there concerns? Were there issues of isolation? So all of these data trending and factors influencing the trend is absolutely available in the product as it stands today.
Great.
And one thing that we've also talked about for future, I'm kind of along these lines, is that we don't have enough data right now from all over to be able to like provide like all of Speakfully's data, so you can kind of see the different trends based off of, other insurance companies that are using Speakfully. Where do they lie compared to them? Like, they won't get specifics about who the company is or whatever, but we've talked about potentially doing that so that once we have more data to give and to show, that we could, like an organization can see where they lie and where they compare to other people in the same industry as them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another question that came through was, do you feel like, and Jenna, maybe you can answer this one, do you feel like you've already learned anything during this pandemic that you have internalized that will be informative for the way that you function as a company in the future, perhaps when things get back to normal, whatever our new normal may be?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because we are a startup. So a lot of what we're dealing with right now in this pandemic is what we've already been doing. It's just in a different way. So as a startup, you have to pivot all the time. You're always changing the way you message things. You're always changing the way your verbiage is. It's all based off of, what's going on and who's responding, who's not responding. And so we're kind of already doing that a little bit. And so when it came to this pandemic and having to change, it was a little bit more aggressive than what we normally do. But yeah, I mean, coming out of this, if I would do any, I don't know. Me personally, I have learned quite a bit about myself because I'm by myself all the time. And so I think coming out of this, I think, I don't think it's going to change the platform at all. It's just basically shown us, I think, a lot more of how passionate we really are about the product, and how much we believe in it. And so I think it's really just going to continue pivoting the way that we've been doing it all along, because we are a startup.
Absolutely. And there's a couple other questions, but the last one, Nandini, I'll flip this one back to you because it seems like everyone's interested in the tech, is, are you able to share anything about any new features for the product that you're working on?
Yeah, and this goes back to the conversations we had earlier about us trying to be nimble and trying to pivot to the current situations. So we're always looking for new features, and I think that's part of the product team. you know, I don't, without sharing too many, you know, details about this, we are working on features that, that are more relevant to the current crisis that people are in. They're more relevant to how people and how organizations need to perceive this new normal, I would say. You know, it's a pretty big shift into a remote work environment. And also it's no longer just necessarily about employees wanting to voice their negative concerns. There's also ways where we could all do with a lot of positivity in today's environment. So we definitely want to be sensitive to the current market trends. So we are innovating on the product side to better fit to these situations. So that's one aspect. And you know, and I see that the question about, you know, how are the dev teams innovating? I mean, we all role play a lot. You know, we start to think about what we would do if we were in a tricky situation. We take real world examples, and we're always trying to find very sensitive ways to build solutions. And I was saying this the other day also to someone about how we focus a lot on designing the product with emotional intelligence. We want to make sure that, you know, the product is, you know, is sensitive to people who are experiencing a very uncomfortable situation or even a happy situation. So that's where we spend a lot of our time on.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate the three of you for joining us today and giving us some insight. And for all of those of you who have joined, you know, thank you so much. I think that, you know, again, all this comes back to community. It all comes back to, you know, sharing together, having an open place, making sure that, you know, if you're a team leader or a team manager, that you're really connecting to the people that are on your team. If you're not in that position yet, or personally, maybe you're retired or maybe you're between jobs or whatever that is, I think this is such a time to, as much as it is important to keep your business moving forward, it's also really important to stay connected to those that you love and those that are in, you know, in your family and your friends and in your community. And it gets so easy. You know, I feel like the first few weeks time was just creeping by, and somehow you know, it's already April 15th. And it feels in some ways like New Year's was just a couple of days ago. So don't let these times slip by, and make sure that you're really reaching out and connecting to those people, you know, especially if you know someone who's home by themselves, or if there's safe things that you can do in your community where you can help others. Because I have a feeling from everything that I've, you know, learned and read is that, you know, suicide rates are up and mental health is a huge thing right now. So reaching out to folks, building your community, doing what you can, if it's just donating a couple dollars to a local charity, I think that that's really great, and that everyone doing whatever they can during these times is just super important. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to the Speakfully team. Next week, we're going to be talking, all about events, events and what's going on with events, and how and when maybe live events are going to be coming back. So we'll have some super special panelists, so look out for our email. We also love hearing from you guys, so feel free to email me personally, robert@CatalystCreativ.com, no E, or our email for this, which is coffee@CatalystCreativ.com, no E at the end of creative. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys here again. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.